Welcome to this fourth edition of the Smart Manufacturing Week. My name is Arnaud Lambert. I'm the director of the Digital Innovation Hub, hosted at Luxinnovation, and it is my pleasure to be your host today and to moderate the first session of the Smart Manufacturing Week. Competitiveness is more than ever at the heart of the manufacturing industry agenda. And innovation is actually key to competitiveness, but not only. The digital is now an integral part of any innovation and business transformation, and these need to be embraced in a more sustainable world. Over the next 3 days, experts of various horizons will give you an insight into how you can embrace the digital and sustainable transformation and why this is useful for manufacturing companies. So what we'll do now, first, I'm going to share my presentation. I'm going to review together the agenda of the week and then dive into the program. Bear with me a moment and it will be up and running. So the overall program that we have for you is actually over 3 days. We will start this morning by looking at the Luxembourg digital landscape, I would say. And we will have the opening of the Ministry of Economy in France, FAYOT, followed by different experts into the fields of the digital front. This afternoon, we'll have the chance to review the mapping of the manufacturing and the industry for the zero sectors prepared by the market intelligence teams from Luxinnovation. And we will also, together with the university, award the ProPilot project. I will not tell you more now because that's for this afternoon as from 4. So don't forget, once you have finished this session, to take a break and then to come back at 4 o'clock. Tomorrow, it will be really focusing on real cases of transformation, successful smart manufacturing transformation use cases. We'll have a session in English in the morning, or one in French in the afternoon. And it's true témoignage, we would say in French, so true experience from the people that have done it, that will share their own experience with you. So hopefully it can inspire you in your endeavor. And on Friday, last but not least, we will be focusing on the sustainable manufacturing. I mean, we know more and more, I would say, quota and more limitation, but also challenges are being put on the manufacturing industry. So you can see it from, I would say, the stick, but let's also see the carrot about what it can embrace for the future for manufacturing. And that will be the focus on Friday. Over the next 3 days, we'll have the pleasure to have this platform that you have connected, and thank you for joining. And on the left-hand side, you have everything linked to the session management, the program, the virtual booths, the meetings, the discussion rooms, the network. I'll cover that in a moment. But let's first focus on the right-hand side. The right-hand side are actually, you have different tabs. The one on the top is the chat. Please use it to communicate between yourself. And express opinions, share things between peers. That's there for that. The next one is the Q&A. So if you have a question that you would like to address to the panel, that's the tab to use. So the chat is for your own discussion. The Q&A is the one that we will be monitoring to look and address the questions to the speakers. Whenever polls will be into the session, you have a poll section that is just the tab below. You will find in the next one the people that are connected so that you can really enjoy and see who it is. And when there are files to be shared, that's where the location where they will be shared. It is a seminar, it is a webinar, it is Manufacturing Week. There will be sessions, but also we encourage yourself to really interact with each other. That's why on the left-hand side, you will see not only the full program, but there are virtual booths that you will need to have, you can have a look at. So let's quickly dive into that. Don't do it yourself because you might go out of the session. But you can do very different things into the agenda. Sorry, I go back to the previous one because there are actually 2 features. So you have not only the program, you have the virtual booths because you have different suppliers and different experts that have booths that can host to you and welcome you. So feel free to attend and get in contact. You can also have meetings with different people, discussion rooms on several topics, and you have also some networking opportunities. When you have finished the session, you can go back into your virtual lobby. You can there update your profile should you want to do so. You can also, of course, review the agenda, different speakers, the participant list, and you have also an interesting feature, which is a networking roulette. So one thing is that you know who you want to begin in contact with, but you have also a feature where actually the networking roulette will actually put you in contact with somebody you might just not know. And it's an interesting feature too. Again, virtual booths, you have different companies there that are active into the manufacturing world with different competences. I would highly encourage you to connect to them and to see the realization and to have more personalized discussion with them. So it is a I wish, a 3-day session and seminar. And so please, the platform is there during the whole 3 days. So it doesn't mean when you don't attend the session, feel free to connect and to chat and to interact with your peers or with providers that are there. It's open for the entire duration, not only during the sessions. So without further ado, let's go quickly in the agenda that we have this morning. And I had the pleasure to moderate. We will start by the opening address from the Ministry of Economy, Franz. Unfortunately, he could not join us live today, has pre-recorded his speech, but is actually wholeheartedly with us and is really the key topics you will hear from himself, what is the focus on the map of the Ministry of Economy. After that, we will have a review of, you might have followed us on the DH on tour from Digital Innovation Hub. Joachim CLEMENS-STOLBRINK, senior advisor, will actually give us a feedback of nearly 3 weeks on the road going into and meeting the industries and see what has been the feedback of that. We have then a very interesting keynote speak from Virginie LEFEBVRE from the list, from strategic advisor to CEO of the list, on the digital trends impacting the industrial transformation and beyond, with real cases that have been worked by the list, and hopefully that will again further inspire your thinking about how to embrace the different technologies, what will be attributable to you or beneficial to you or less. After that, with Matthieu from LuxProvide, we actually going into the high-performance computing world. I mean, Meluxina has been on the agenda and on the press for a few months. And here we're going to have a look at what it is exactly and how it can contribute to the industry. From one important aspect of today, let's jump into a really shaping the future with Gaia-X. Gauthier Cromling from the Ministry of Economy and Rafus from Proximus are going to share the insights of Gaia-X and how it will actually shape the next generation data infrastructure potential for the industry. Last but not least, Géraud Guillou, Senior Advisor on the European R&D from Luxinnovation, is going to enlighten us on what is the European Digital Innovation Hub Network. So as you see, a full program around those digital topic and the Luxembourg digital landscape. But without further ado, let's start with the welcome world and the opening addresses of the Ministry of Economy, Franz. The video will be launched.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 4th edition of the Smart Manufacturing Week. The manufacturing industry of research and innovation in the Luxembourg economy. In order to remain competitive and sustainable in the future, it is today facing a number of challenges. The digital transformation and more sustainable practices are essential for the green transition of the industry to succeed. However, this task is challenging for any organization. That is why, 4 years ago, Luxinnovation decided to launch the Smart Manufacturing Week. The objective is to give Luxembourg industrial companies an opportunity to share their experience on working with digital transformation, smart processes, and sustainable and also to learn about good practice that could be companies, no matter the size. This year's edition puts a special emphasis on sustainable manufacturing. This is a key pillar of the ministry's strategy aimed at turning Luxembourg into a European leader in digitalization of key strategic sectors and making our economy compatible. Several forerunner companies will share their reasons for adopting a sustainable manufacturing approach and to derive from this way. This year's edition of the Smart Manufacturing Week also includes the awards ceremony of the Transregional Prot Pilot Grand Prix 2021. The Prot Pilot Grand Prix awards greater region that have developed processes and innovative measures to improve their productivity and efficiency. The competitiveness of the greater region, it also helps the participating companies to get more visibility, and I look forward to discovering the winners. Dear guests, supporting companies in their ambitions to become smarter, more digital, and more sustainable is a priority for the government. In order to provide concrete, the Ministry of the Economy has set up a number of initiatives together with several partners. These include, among others, the Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub, Meluxina, our brand new high-performance computer, and the Luxembourg Regional Hub of Gaia X, a European initiative aimed at developing the foundations of a European federated open data infrastructure. Those initiatives offer industrial companies opportunities to prepare and understand various aspects of their digital transformation. You will hear more about these initiatives during the presentation of the Luxembourg digital landscape later today. Besides supporting the digital transformation of our industry, it is also important to have a deep understanding of the needs, gaps, and challenges that manufacturing companies are facing in order to help them address important issues for the future in the best way possible. This is why Luxinnovation has produced a mapping of Luxembourg's manufacturing industry that you will discover today. This mapping provides valuable information as well as an overview of the skills and of Luxembourg service providers that can support industrial companies in adopting an Industry 4.0 approach. First time ever that we have such subsectors, the size of the companies and their various specializations. For sure, this will help us to identify any missing links and to spot new trends and opportunities. Dear guests, I would have loved to be with you here in presential today. But before concluding my speech, let me wish you all very interesting and inspiring exchanges and a successful event. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. FAYOT. It was a very interesting introduction, and we have clearly to see the importance of digital aspects into the industry and how in the landscape of Luxembourg, what are the different areas. Mr. FAYOT presented already different areas that we're going to look this morning, starting with the Luxembourg Innovation Hub, moving to Meluxina, the HPC, and many other things that we cover in the later sessions. But without further ado, let me introduce the next speaker, my colleague, Joachim CLEMENS-STOLBRINK, Senior Advisor, Digital Transformation at Luxinnovation, and he's going to share with us what has been the key insight of the DH on tour, meaning for 3 weeks now, the DH, the Digital Innovation Hub of Luxembourg, has been in a bus at the companies, different sites to get their insights and much more. So, Joe, over to you.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, as Arnaud said, we have been on our DIH initiative called DIH on Tour, and I will quickly share my screen for those that have probably not followed us on LinkedIn to get a better understanding what it is. Actually, the idea was simply, and listening to the feedback of the Luxembourgish industry, to get closer to the industry and to use the bus for basically two main reasons. On the one hand, to provide awareness sessions on Industry 4.0 and cybersecurity, and to offer also roundtable discussions around this topic in Luxembourg. Now, before moving into the details, maybe just for those that do not know who we are. We, Arnaud, Nicola, myself, from the DIH team, we are basically there to help the Luxembourgish industry to support any kind of questions, concerns you might have in regards to your digitalization efforts. On the one hand, as you can see on the left-hand side of that screen, we like to be the middleman between all the different actors we have here in Luxembourg around digitalization, which can be for investors, governmental institutions, the number of institutions we have here in Luxembourg, starting from the university, SNT, SMILE, who also supported us on our tour, and also the large number of companies, providers that can and have the capabilities to support you in regards to your digitalization efforts. And of course, last not least, that's more related to the right-hand side, of course, also to support you once you like to enter any kind of national aid or European aid programs. And our colleague later will also explain a bit more what's behind those different programs. So in a nutshell, we are here to support you. That's the key element. We like to inform. Taking the example of the bus, we like to inspire, we like to get in discussion and to engage all of us, all the actors together in your digitalization efforts. Now, moving a bit to the bus idea. What was the background to do it? We from the DIH team, we certainly had the interest to get closer to the industry, also to reach more of particularly the smaller companies. Let's take the example of the north of Luxembourg. By getting closer and ease the access into our different sessions, that more people can join just for an hour, for 2 hours discussion maximum, without having the hurdle of traffic and long distances. That gave us the chance, on the one hand, to present Luxinnovation and what is the mission of Luxinnovation, but also to introduce us as a relatively new DIH team and also explain why we exist and what is our purpose and how we can help you. The mapping was already mentioned, which was the base for the invitation. So we will learn today that Luxembourg actually has quite a big number of companies that are producing something. All those were invited, and that gave us a chance also to get connected. At the end, can you still see my, oh, sorry, I did a mistake. Let me, one moment. I hit the wrong button. So now we are back. At the end, it was, the main purpose was to better understand what are the requirements of the Luxembourgish industry, where are obstacles, where are problems, which should help us as the DIH team to come back to you with new initiatives, new ideas, and basically to define our roadmap on how we can support you in the near future. So overall, Arnaud mentioned already, we were on tour for nearly 3 weeks. We had about 160 people that joined us on the bus from 100 different companies. And overall, we visited 12 zone industriels. You see the map of Luxembourg. You can see a little bit how we went through the country. So we started in the north and ended in the south here in Belval. Of course, we had some of the well-known companies in our bus, but also a number of SMEs, which was quite interesting. So good mix of different companies, and therefore also, I have to say, a very high quality of discussions. And last not least, I think we drank more than 300 coffees, and thanks to Cesar, our very nice bus driver and person supporting us throughout the week. Here on that, you see a bit some impression about the tour. You can see by looking carefully in those pictures, sometimes we had small rounds, sometimes we had large rounds, but it did not matter. The insights we were able to get and the quality we had on the discussions were really eye-opening and inspiring, I think, for most of the attendees, and we also received quite some good feedback. So in a nutshell, I mean, of course, the entire tour was a lot about data-driven economy, technology, but what was the red line of all the different discussions throughout the week was the fact that without the people that are involved in this innovation, it will not work out. Actually, the people make the difference, that everything we talk about when it comes to data becomes information. And if we look now to the typical buzzwords that you usually find around the subject of Industry 4.0 or even smart factory, everything is often very much related to the production cycle. But actually, the big learning out of the 3 weeks is, which is probably not a surprise, but the element of humans, of people, of employees that should be involved in all those transformation discussions and initiatives to make it a success. Though even if a lot of the techie tools are concentrating on production and the things around, you should more see it also coming from the customer, and from the customer and listening to your customers. It will have impact on your support function, on your production, of course, but also on your supply chain. And that was, as said, mentioned before, the red line of that week. So in simple terms, and also, I mean, listening and reading a lot about Industry 4.0, we are often talking about, is it the fourth revolution? And we had indeed quite some discussions on that question, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's if it is a revolution or evolution, it's already happening. And if you take the information as described before, you listen to your customer and you start to think transforming your business, actually then we come to the element of innovation. And innovation is certainly also where we from Luxinnovation, under the umbrella of RDI support, can support the companies. Now, what's next? What did we learn? Of course, we had already a roadmap in place, but a few elements that I can already mention here that are more or less a direct result of those 3 weeks being in the bus. We will surely launch in cooperation with FEDIL Industry 4.0 survey. To better understand where all those companies that are now part of the manufacturing mapping stand when it comes to digitalization, and where are the obstacles. Certainly a wish that we could nearly hear in all the roundtable discussions is that we should offer really supplier days where OEMs or ICT suppliers really show examples where they have helped industrial companies how to solve certain things and how to improve and transform their companies. And certainly a big concern around industry, but I would say generally speaking, is of course everything related to cybersecurity. And today with the technology trends where you basically more and more interconnect your production environment with the office environment, cybersecurity becomes more and more a threat on the one hand and an absolute necessity to move on, particularly if you consider also to include any kind of cloud cloud solutions in the overall strategy of your company. Last not least, I like really to thank you some of the companies and organizations listed here for either helping us to make this tour happening, FEDIL certainly being a co-sponsor of this initiative. Many companies provided us basically also the ground to park the bus, or did act as a local ambassador to promote even locally our tour. And thanks to the number of keynote speakers that we had throughout the 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for this summary of the tour that actually finished yesterday. And hopefully we will going to, Joe, if you can just stop sharing. And then,
yeah, I'm trying.
Thank you.
Just trying. My mouse doesn't like me.
No worries. It was a very interesting experience, and if you didn't have the chance to join that initiative this year, hopefully you will have the chance next year. And actually, it was very fruitful for the Digital Innovation Hub to get closer, basically, to its primary customers and to get all the feedback and see and the networking there. It's also a key element moving forward, where we could see actually the impact of those digitalization and the fears, but also the opportunities. And moving forward to our next speaker, Virginie LeFEBVRE, Strategic Advisor to the CEO of LIST and the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, is a key actor in the Luxembourg digital landscape, about opening the technologies and working with them, discovering them, applying them to value creation needs. So I'm here handing over the floor to Virginie for her impact and her message according on the digital trends impacting the industry transformation in 2022 and beyond. Virginie, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. 2 seconds. Yes, I think you see my screen, correct?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, good. Hello, everybody. So my name is Virginie LeFEBVRE, and I'm the strategic advisor of the CEO of LIST. I'm struggling with my two screen. Yeah, okay, good. So I'm very happy and with great pleasure that I will show you a glimpse of basically the digital trends that are impacting and will impact industrial transformation in the future. So as already Mr. Clemens just spoke about, so if we look at where we come from and where we are heading to when it comes to the major innovation that have shaped the industry transformation, then today we are speaking about the fourth industrial revolution or evolution, depending on who speaks. And basically this industry 4.0 revolution is really about transforming, gaining in efficiency by automating processes further with the help of a series of digital technologies which are highlighted here. What's also interesting is basically that nowadays there is also a fifth revolution that people start to speak about, which is the Industry 5.0. So Industry 5.0 is more about personalization. So it's really about putting back the human at the center. And what we see is that the industries and are really trying to put more effort in really improving the experiences that the customers have, but also other type of stakeholders, such as, for example, the suppliers, vendors, shareholders, of course, but also, and last but not least, the employees. So if we think about putting back the human at the center, then it also means that basically the interest, but also the concern and values are also equally important, and therefore that's why the Industry 5.0 also take, in addition to the technical and economic dimension, it also take into account the sustainability dimension as well as social dimension. So what's a bit different with Industry 5.0, it's basically that's not going to put an end to Industry 4.0. It's going to happen simultaneously. And the technologies that are behind this fifth revolution or evolution, it's basically the same technologies that are also behind Industry 4.0 revolution. So I just would like still to add one element to this state of play. It's basically the fact that because of this technology basically are feeding each other, they are developing on top of each other, then it also means that the speed at which these technologies are developing is increasing rapidly. Some even say it does so at an exponential rate. And basically here, it's also important that the companies put increasingly, put more effort on upskilling and reskilling the employees in order that they can face this new technological change, but also that they can basically benefit from these technologies. And here again, and that these technologies that are highlighted here, they also can help in this upskilling, reskilling efforts. So in the next 20 minutes, I will show you 6 use cases that we have here at least. So really impact-driven experiences that are either related to Industry 4.0 or Industry 5.0, as well as how these technologies, or some of these technologies can be used to help to upskill or reskill people at the factory. So the first case I would like to share with you is a case that it's a project that we had with Ceratizid. So it was really about using AI and data analytics in order to save resources. So Ceratizid is a high technology engineering group that specialized in cutting tools as well as hard material solutions. And a couple of years ago, they initiated the Industry 4.0 journey. They wanted to basically digitalize the production processes here on the site in Luxembourg. So they came to LIST, and LIST helped them to basically understand and especially model the shrinkage that occurs when they produce the hot rolls that are used in the steel industry. So shrinkage, why does it happen? It's basically because during the sintering process, then the pores get eliminated. And of course, the better you know what type of shrinkage is going to happen, the better you will be able to produce a product that's really near to the expected product, the end product that the company wants to produce. So the model needed to take into account a series of variables, for example, some production variable such as compression parameters or temperatures. They also needed, of course, to take into account the dimensions before pre-sintering, as well as the material properties, such as the powder chemical composition and so on. So, like I mentioned, so this model was based on machine learning and really helped the company basically to save resources. Yeah, that's the first example. So the second example I would like to show you, it was also about using AI, but also here data visualization in order to improve RDI process efficiency. So here the case, the project was for Goodyear, and Goodyear really wanted to take advantage of the legacy data to reduce the tire design time. So LIST was involved in two stages. The first was really at the design stage. So here was really to look in high-dimensional data sets and try to retrieve relevant information. And the second stage in which LIST was involved was the test stage. So basically here we looked at tires and more particularly at videos of tires in the visible spectrum. So that's the picture which is higher up, but also videos of the tire in infrared conditions. And here the idea was really to look at the conditions that happen, that are occurring at the surface of contact of the tire. And for example, here, I think it was the example of the temperature. So the idea is that basically the temperature influence the rolling resistance of the tire, so it needs to be more or less evenly distributed. So the idea really was to help as much as possible the company using these data sets, whether it's video or the type of data, to really reduce the tire design time. So in the same project, we also use and leverage on one of our LIST infrastructure, which is the visual. So the visual is a huge screen of more or less 10 meters wide, and that really allow people to interact with the data on the fly. So the idea here was to bring specialists, let's say in aquaplaning, in rubber, in the shape of tires, bring the expertise, bring the data, and interact directly with the data in order that they could come up with kind of a collaborative decisions on what's the best way to develop tires. So if we now move to some examples related to Industry 5.0, I first would like to present you a case a project we had and we are still having with Polygon. And Polygon is a company specialized in professional waste management. So basically they collect waste from restaurants as well as collectivity, schools, and so on. And they came up, they came to LIST because they were confronted to a problem, to the following problem. So first, they were not always able to deliver the expected quality of services to the client. And second, they were also not able to really personalize the services to exactly need. So this resulted in, I mean, this was caused by let's say two things. First, the frequency at which they were collecting the waste is really determined in the contract. That's one thing. And the second thing is that the tours to collect the waste was done kind of manually by the drivers themselves, and also without really using I mean, a lot of data. So there were not much information they could use in order to better organize this collection tours. So this resulted in three scenarios. Sometimes Polygon was able to pick the waste on time, but in other cases it was too late. So that led, of course, to the dissatisfaction of the clients, and sometimes too early, which is not too bad for the client, but which is not very acceptable from an environmental perspective. So basically here, LIST help Polygon to develop, propose, and validate an IoT-based and real-time waste collection system. So there were two pillars in this project. The first was really about using AI and data analytics techniques to improve the understanding of waste management activities in Luxembourg. So here the idea was to place some ultrasonic sensors in bins that would, with the help of which we would be able to basically assess the remaining empty space that was in each of the bins. So the data, the sensors were connected to the cloud, and the data was computed and processed within the cloud, and then the relevant information was shown to Polygon in a user-friendly format, so a dashboard that you can see here. And this dashboard was very useful for Polygon because then they could have now access to this real time knowledge about how filled the dustbins are in the whole country. The second pillar of the project was about proposing new multi-objective optimization models in order to improve a variety of business processes, such as the routing, scheduling, fleet management, and driver allocation, and also with the goal to generate personalized, real-time, and predictive recommendations. So here, basically, the idea was really to combine different data flows. Some of the data flows, for example, related to the client location, so using GPS data, but also to the truck capacity, so how much how much weight is already in each of the truck, as well ERP data to know the clients, what are the sites of collection, but as well what are the type of waste do they produce. And finally, also connected to kind of web services, which relate to road trafficking, weather forecast, but also if there are some major events that are organized in one region or another. So the idea of fusing this data and using this classification data to classify this data was really to create a personalized activity profile for each of the customers of Polygon, to really model waste production. And last but not least, the idea is also to really predict waste collection a few days in advance. I think they can go up to 5 to 7 days. And that really help basically Polygon to first of all provide better services to the customer, but also in a more economically and also environmental friendly way. And a second case I would like to present you related to Industry 4.0 is more about how to use augmented reality for enhancing the safety of staff, let's say. So while the first case with the one of Polygon, we really looked at how to improve the experience of the customer. Here it's how to improve the experience of staff, of employees. So what I would like to mention, so I will show you a video in a minute, but this case, basically, it was developed in the scope of a project that didn't really targeted employees, but more firefighters and police agent that might be confronted to a dangerous situation. And in this case, it's about how to detect radiological sources, which is of course that can harm, of course, the health of people, right? But this case, although it's was used for firefighters and in other contexts, let's say, you could really imagine to also use such a technology in a factory setting, for example. So I will just play now the video, hoping that there will not be any issues. So what you could see here is that basically there is a drone that is able to detect radiological sources data, and it draws a kind of cordons, which is right away visible into the augmented reality system. So now the team would like to go further with this technology, and basically instead of using the augmented reality system, they would like to eventually use glasses. So such as the HoloLens glasses of Microsoft. So then people could right away see where the danger is by wearing these glasses. So third project or use case I would like to show you related to Industry 5.0 is one that want to use IoT, data analytics, but also life cycle assessment in order to ensure reliable and sustainable water use in the steel industry. So this is really more related to what Arnaud was saying at the beginning of the day. It's really about going towards a sustainable manufacturing industry. So if we think about the steel industry, they use a lot of water, and they are confronted to three main problems when we think about water. So first, and this is really related right away directly to the climate change. So there is increasing water stress, which leads to limited or insufficient availability of ground and eventually river water, with the potential negative effect that this can have on the production processes. There is also an issue of the lack or the limited reuse of wastewater, because this wastewater usually is highly fluctuating in terms of hardness as well as content of salt, organic matters, which is caused by the different treatments that occurs during the production processes. And finally, there is still a lack of information about the water flow rates as well as the water composition and complex water system. So basically here, it means that the companies are basically not able to really predict the upcoming problems that would be related to water composition. So if we just take an easy example, depending on how much water there is, let's say, in rivers, then the composition of the water change, among which, for example, the pH. So if it gets too acid, then basically it leads to corrosion of the pipes later on. And if it's too basic, then basically it's gonna might lead to some kind of a scale deposit in the pipe. So all of this, of course, let's say, wounds the pipes, and the manufacturing industry needs to take some kind of corrective action. And the better they're able to predict what's going to happen, the better they will be able to take the good and on-time corrective action. So these three type of problems basically were determine the objective of the project, which only started. And there are different pillars here. I will just mention you one because it's more related to digitalization. The other one is more related to how, for example, really recover and treat the water in order to make sure it's reused. So the one list will be involved. It's about really improving the water management and treatment plant operation by developing a prediction tool based on modeling and simulations of the different water circuits using new installed digital monitoring and control systems. So here again, the idea is to install a variety of sensors at the different level of the water circuit. So whether it's at when the water goes in the plant or out, as well as when it's used during the different in the different batches during the production processes. So it's also important to develop proper measurement tool that align with the requirement of the industry. And finally, it's really about developing and modeling developing this prediction tool by modeling the different circuits, and also taking care of that not only the technical and economic dimension are taken care of, but also the environmental dimension. So what would be the impact on the environment for that or that decision taken on the water circuits? So the last case I would like to present you relates to how technologies can be used to upskill or reskill people. And here again, I have a short video, so I'm gonna show it to you. So this short video, actually, I realized it was in French. So I guess you understood what it was about. But basically, this video showed you how it's possible to embed learning and skill assessment into the production. So the novelty here was that the assessment software gets inputs from the machine and the user to make training directly feasible on the machine. So in the last 5 minutes I hope I still have, I will present you one of our infrastructure, which is the LIST AI data analytics and visualization technology infrastructure. So probably you're quite familiar with these barriers that impede some of the companies to actually embrace Industry 4.0 technologies. Some, of course, relate to the fact that factory assets might be too old to be digitalized. Others more relate to the capital that must be spent. So some manufacturing companies are fearful when it's about spending on digitalization while they don't have in their hand a proof of concept. It's the same here. Why investing in sensors if we are not sure that they will be fully used or utilized? And there is, as one of the speakers already this morning mentioned, there is an issue of people, of skills, of expertise. And finally, there is also the fear that they will be confronted to many multiple protocols, as well as they will need to embed third-party IoT vendors in the value chain, which might make these supply chains even more complex and more vulnerable to risks. So with the IDA infrastructure LIST aim basically to break down or do an attempt to break down these barriers. For example, IDA is really about providing a test before invest platform. So it's really about helping companies to explore research, development, innovation phases before they invest. The idea is also to provide services that are focused on data value production. We also provide trainings and access to a variety of expert data scientists and software scientists, but also we also developed an architecture and services that really thought of to prevent vendor lock-in. So just a few words on what is really IDA. So I already mentioned to you the visual in the case of Goodyear. So that's really about the visualization pillar of IDA. It's about really playing with data in a collaborative manner in order to take a collaborative decision using, for example, the visual, but also other type of visualization we can provide. There is also the cognitive pillar. So I showed you in many cases how we can leverage on big data, use data analytics and AI to make sense of data and benefit from it. And finally, there is the computing pillar. So here it's really about doing complex simulation using high performance computing, among which, so we will leverage on Melixina for that one. And on the right side of the slide, you can see the infrastructure of IDA. So here, basically the bubbles, the chain of bubbles that are depicted here represent a data analytics, generate data analytic chain with different steps. And you can see here that there are different elements we are leveraging on to really cover all of this chain in order to provide the best service as possible to the companies and the partners we are working with. So I think this is enough. That's what I had to present you today. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Virginie. It was indeed really very condensed and enlightful with not only the different practical cases that you've been working on, but also some future expectations on what can be done. And we have a key question on the audience. Which was a bit of the presentation related to the AI initiatives. And the question is, did LIST develop the solutions, I mean the AI software, in the two cases that you have presented?
So I mean, I was not involved myself in the project, but basically we have people that are especially specialized in explainable AI. So I think that, of course, like I mentioned while presenting the IDA infrastructure, they leverage on existing software, if I can say it like this. But for sure, it's just not reusing something that's available out of the shelf.
Thank you. I mean, do we have the presentations? We will make sure that you have. I mean, first of all, the video will be available for the participants, and we will discuss and see with the different presenters the availability of their presentation. But I don't believe it's an issue. But it's a certain elements need to have certain authorization. Thank you very much, Virginie. It was very interesting, and you already paved the way to the fact that it's a lot about data, it's a lot about simulation, and that's why I bringing to the next speaker, being Matthieu LeFebvre, group leader, supercomputing data solution at LuxProvide. LuxProvide being more known, as you can see on the slide, also about the operating company for Luxina, and Matthieu is going really to tell us all about supercomputing, but also the benefits it can provide to the industry. So Matthieu, over to you.
Thank you, Arnaud. Arnaud, thank you for the very nice introduction. And I'm actually very glad, as you said, to be talking after Virginie, because I think we're kind of a natural follow-up for what LIST is doing. And we intend to collaborate quite a lot with LIST in different problems, especially when you have requirements that involve a lot of computation going on. So maybe I will be just starting this talk with a small overview of LuxProvide, who we are and what we do. So LuxProvide is under the authority of the Luxembourg state, meaning so we have a mission to accelerate the economic progress, the social progress, by providing access to supercomputing resources and expertise. So really where we want to put the focus on is that we are in Luxembourg, we are in Europe, so we're providing a place where data can be hosted securely, where in respecting GDPR and such things, and we also try to enable companies and especially SMEs, because they do not necessarily have access to such resources, to take advantage of such a machine and go to the next step. Of course, we've got the same priorities than the Luxembourgish government, meaning manufacturing is really an important point for us to focus on, and we really strive to serve them well and help them advance their business as well. So just to give you a small idea, you might have seen the picture of Luxina on the other side, but so what is a supercomputer? What is Luxina? So Luxina, you can see that as a big computer. So it's actually more a collection of small computers that are brought together. And what make it special is the connection you have between these different pieces, what we call networking. And that what really brings the power of the supercomputer. So there's a few numbers there, number of floating point operations per second, the size of the storage and so on, but usually there's a fairly abstract unless you're an IT expert. So maybe with an analogy, it's slightly easier. So if you take people running marathon these days, the best one are running marathon in 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it would be like if you have Luxina running the marathon, Luxina will take 0.4 seconds. So it's how fast it goes. And that's why it's a very special and unique machine. So when it was ranked in last June, when it was inaugurated, it was the 37th fastest supercomputer in the world and the 4th greenest one, because we have a data center. We are hosted in a data center that is very efficient. The technology we are using is also very energy efficient. So in terms of manufacturing, you can say, okay, that's a big machine, but what kind of problem can it solve? So there is a number of areas when it can be useful for. So but before talking about manufacturing, we can go back slightly and look at high performance computing and high performance data analytics. So high performance computing, it's what people have been doing for 20, 30, 40 years now. It's mostly related to simulation. So you simulate the property of fluids, you simulate the property of mechanical properties of something, physical, chemical properties, you can develop drugs and so on. So that is very well understood. Often, of course, it was done by large company or academic research units. And on the other side, you had data analytics, and now with AI and machine learning and so on. But with, as you saw in the previous talk, you've got more and more data. So when you're trying to address all this data, when you're trying to extract values from all of this data, you end up with a problem. And the problem is, do I have is my computer powerful enough to process this amount of data? So then that's where you see a synergy between the high performance computing that is simulation driven and the high performance data analytics that is data driven, but are using the same infrastructure to reach to a solution. So on the more data analytics part, you have optimization of production, predictive maintenance, analysis of the data that are produced by the smart manufacturing systems and so on. And what is, to me, very interesting is that in the middle, you're seeing something like digital twins or virtual factories. And then you're relying on data, but you're also simulating. So it's bringing the data in your simulation. And Meluxina can help through pretty much the whole chain, if your data and your simulation needs, of course, are large enough. And what does it bring to you concretely? You're using a supercomputer, you're using an advanced infrastructures with a lot of power to solve a problem. The first thing is to improve time to market. So for instance, if you take the COVID-19 medication, the research for that, it can be fairly complex and it can take a lot of time. So what the pharmaceutical industry are huge data banks where they have a lot of proteins, a lot of molecules, and they want to test if one of them is a good candidate to tackle the COVID-19 problem. So it requires a lot of simulation, and the faster you go, of course, the faster you're likely to find a potential candidate, then you can, from which you can develop a cure or a vaccine. And of course, it was really important to have it shortly on the market, and we have all seen that some companies were better than the other ones are doing so, and they took the market. The other thing you can do is to tackle larger problems. Here below, it's a seismic imaging, but it applies to pretty much anything. You can assimilate more data. You can have more realistic physics, meaning instead of having something simplified, you can simulate what happened really in nature, and that's often leads to better solution. And you can go finer, increase resolution. So it's like looking at a whole TV and looking at a new TV. You will see the picture in a much clearer way. And the last main advantage is to save cost. For instance, for a plane, what you do to build a plane, you build a mock-up that you put in a wind tunnel. And inside this wind tunnel, while building, there is a special pane that shows pressure that is applied to the plane, and you can find out if the plane is going to fly. The issue with that is building a mock-up, putting it in a wind tunnel is very time-consuming and very expensive. So you can reduce significantly the number of mock-ups you need to create by doing this virtual prototyping and testing on a supercomputer. So you see, what I've shown you until then was use cases or that were taken for large companies or academic research. And often we can hear that people say, yes, but I'm a SME, so it's HPC is not for me. HPC is too expensive. HPC will not bring me a return on investment that is significant. And actually, there has been a program from the European Union called Fortissimo that has been trained to debunk this myth by developing use cases. So, for instance, this one, Koenigsegg, it's a small car manufacturer, very high performance car. They're coming from Northern Europe, and they were trying to see if the vehicle was going to stick to the road. You drive it at extremely high speed, and it doesn't need to swerve and to move. It needs to be stable. So they teamed up with a HPC expert and HPC center to develop fluid dynamic simulation around the car to see how it will behave. And the result of that, it does significantly reduce the design cost, the time to prototype, because, as I said, no wind tunnel testing, and then result at the end in shorter time to market. So can go to another example that is also from the manufacturing industry. So you have this company, Textiles Control, that is developing joints for pipes. So you've got it's oil and gas pipes. You need joints, and the pressures, the temperatures, the condition are very hard on these joints. So you need to create them in a way that they are very sturdy. And from time to time, you need to go to the customer side to make sure that the joints are still tight, the joints are still in a good condition. Or if it breaks, you need emergency technicians going to the customer. So by doing simulation, this small company was able to reduce the design time by 30%, but also to make it so much better that the technicians were less forced to go to do maintenance on the customer side. And a new timing, checking if everything is working well at the customer side is really expensive. And so the Textiles Control does not win directly from this improvement in design, but they win by making customer savings. So then in turn, they're more likely to win a customer because the material is seen as robust, the services are seen as better. So these two cases are pretty much on the simulation side, the traditional HPC side. First one was computational fluid dynamics. Second one is finite element analysis, so mechanical engineering. What happened now, as we were discussing, as have you seen in the previous talk, is that there is a lot of data coming from all sectors, space platform, fintech, tech, and so on, and of course from Industry 4.0. Because you've got sensors that are being developed everywhere, you have a connected device, and everything is being recorded, and you need to take advantage of the system. So in a way, for me, you can improve your existing business, but you can also create new businesses by using these new sources of data. So last example I promised for you today is Texa. It's a small Spanish SME that was also part of this program, Fortissimo. So they create sensors, and they create a system of sensors that then they sell to truck carriers and so on. And then with the sensors, they know gather the data. And by gathering the data, they can predict when there will be a problem on the truck. Meaning that the truck doesn't need to go to the garage to make sure everything is being checked. The company is able to send a technician preventively to fix the issues as they arise or just a bit before. So no more time spent driving to the garage, less time immobilizing the vehicle. And that's new business because you sell the service of sending technician directly to the customer. And I think that's pretty much the future in terms of data and data acquisition, data treatment. So yes, okay. Again, these are nice examples, but it might be a big step for some of you to take. So the approach we take at LuxProvide, and I think LIST, from what I hear from LIST, they're doing a very similar approach. Is we gather requirement to see if you can take advantage of HPC, if you can take advantage of if you have data correctly collected and so on. So if it's not HPC ready, we can implement a proof of concept that is not so expensive and see if the answer is yes or no. It can be no, and maybe there is no, it's not relevant for you to go to HPC and HPDA. Maybe it is. If it is, we can develop, put that in production and incrementally deploy the solution, improve it, and so on. Meaning that often you need to tune for performances, but at some points it gradually becomes less relevant. So implementing the proof of concept, we have been working very closely with Luxinnovation to propose solutions to companies that might not have necessarily the resources or might need the resources for the project. So there is this very nice IDI project. I will talk about it a bit on the next slide. But we have also partnership with LIST, University, SNT to make sure that if you're not ready to take HPC, it's this because maybe you're not digitalized enough. So maybe a research project is a right first step before moving on to HPC. And then we can refine, for instance, with LIST, where to go next. So in terms of funding opportunity, because I'm saying the proof of concept is reasonably priced, but it can be an unexpected expense. So there is two main options: going to go national or European. And in my opinion, it's just mine. The national options is much nicer. Okay, the grants are sometimes a bit smaller, but the time to decision it's much faster. And Luxinnovation is doing a fantastic job of guiding people and making sure they have the file correct before it can be given to the Ministry of Economy. And the acceptance rate is usually also much better than for the European part. So on top of that, there is two other programs that is Fit for Start. That is very nice for startups. We are partnering with Luxinnovation again to bring HPC to startups, that maybe they're not even quite ready for IDI, but that might be a first step. And Arnaud is also leading, and with the first speaker, Joachim, was also talking about that, about the Digital Innovation Hub that is also developing a number of packages to help SMEs use to use HPC resources and European HPC resources with the level of security and trust that you have there. Okay, so just to summarize about what we provide an HPC and HPDA facility. So that is Meluxina supercomputer. This Meluxina supercomputer has very computing power, so regular CPUs, when you can do, it's pretty much like a huge workstations, a lot of huge workstations, 573 of them actually, a low latency interconnect between them. But we have also GPU accelerators, meaning that's dedicated hardware, that's graphical card, and they have been proven to be very effective to train artificial intelligence model. So it's a modular system, you see, that is thought to accommodate the needs of different actors. Maybe you have a different algorithm, you need a different solution than your neighbor, and Meluxina is able to provide that because of this modularity. And there is, of course, technical support, and we try to be on time. We've got SLAs that are also, the machine is co-owned by the European HPC joint undertaking, meaning they have 35% of the machine, and we own 65% of the machine. But they expect very high quality there, and so we're giving the same quality to every customer, even if they're not coming through the Euro HPC joint undertaking program. In terms of services, because you might say, okay, that's very nice, but that's fancy technology. I don't necessarily have the resources in-house to extract the value of this machine. So we have a solution engineering team that is day-to-day, they are doing a bit of pre-sales, meaning they are designing solutions that will match the customer needs. But once that is done, they do not stop there. They do implement the solution, making sure it's matching the requirements and making sure it is performant, and you take the best use you can of the machine. We end up with the law package, and we really take the company hands by the end to make sure that their needs are fully covered. So in terms of HPC for industry, why would you need to consider it? So the reason you need to consider it, if you have a need, if your computation takes too much time, if you have data that you cannot, a lot of data, or your data are growing, and you want to make sure that when you reach to a point, you will be ready to crunch numbers and provide insights to your stakeholders or to your customers. And I really believe that, the big companies have been doing HPC for a reason for a long time. It's because it creates long-term competitive advantages. I was working, for instance, with Total for a long time, and Total had their supercomputers since the 70s, the 80s. I'm not quite sure. And the reason they do that is because they buy bigger machines than ours. The machines are probably 100 million euros. And but when they drill a hole, I had the number for a few years back, drilling a hole was between 20 and 200 million euros. So when you drill at the wrong place, you're losing a lot of money. So the machine pays for itself. And it is the same for a lot of businesses, except that the entry ticket was too high. Now we believe that SMEs should also be part of the game, and that they should be first-class citizens for HPC centers. And that's a unique proposition in Luxembourg, and I don't believe you can find a similar proposition anywhere else in Europe or maybe worldwide. So what you need to consider if you consider moving to HPC, if you want to see if it's something that will suit your needs, you need to consider the full chain, compute storage expertise, but also very important, and I think I don't need to convince anybody about that, because that's people or customers are asking for that by themselves. They want a place where they are not subject to cloud attack, patriot attack, and so on. They don't want anybody to snoop at the data. They want they want an environment they can trust, and that's really a crucial point. And being Luxembourg, we provide this insurance. So just if you have any questions, we'll be very happy to hear about them and try to answer them. And if you don't have questions right now, you have my contact information, and we can have a private chat, and we can define something for you if you would like to. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthieu. So don't forget to start sharing your presentation. And we have actually a question that we would have expected, of course, considering I would say, the interest there is on the market, but not only. I mean, is it possible to see the beast? I mean, is it access to the public? How does that work? I mean, one thing is, of course, having a project on that, but before, I mean, certain people also want to see it, the material aspect, before starting their project, which is well now.
We do it a bit, but honestly it's a bit difficult because we are in a secure data center. The security is very, very strict. I cannot enter like that. I need to request days in advance, even for myself, right? So we do organize punctual visit, but general public visit is not something we have planned right now. We know the interest, we're thinking about it, but we're not quite sure how to do it. So because you can imagine that when you talk to somebody that it's very secure, and they see that we're bringing everybody, it's distorting a bit the message. But we're very much aware of the interest. Thank you.
Exactly. At least you know what is the interest, and thank you for already sharing. I mean, the whole difference between HPC and HPDA, so high performance computing in high performance data analytics. I think and also seeing true cases for that. I think probably the best way to see the machine is actually to have a project, and in the end, I'm sure one way or another, when you have a project, you will have the chance to see the machine. But don't be over, I would say, don't expect to see a cathedral. You will see a set of boxes that are hyper-powerful computing, but if you have a nice wardrobe, that would probably look the same, just a bit more noisy. But moving forward, I mean, we spoke about data, a lot about data. We spoke about, and of course, the HPC, I think, is a particular, and we're very fortunate in Luxembourg to have that in our ecosystem, accessible again to the industry directly and to SMEs, so no second-class citizen or industries. And we have that, of course, in Luxembourg. Luxinnovation also, together with the University of Luxembourg and LuxProvide, is hosting the National Competence Center in high-performance computing, where it can also help you there, and how basically to help you, your project and thinking about your project over there. But when we speak about data, a lot of people think about cloud. So if we speak about cloud, then suddenly we have another name finishing with an A coming up into the radar, which is Gaia. After Melixina, we have Gaia. And here we have the pleasure to welcome two gentlemen that are actually working in the Gaia X Hub Luxembourg. And so Gauthier Cromling, from Project Leader, Digital Technologies and Cybersecurity and Ministry of Economy, as well as Ralph Hustadt, that is Digital Acceleration Lead, at Proximus Luxembourg. And thank you, Gauthier and Ralph, for joining this session. And please tell us all about Gaia Hub Luxembourg and what it can bring also to industry for the future. We have, by the way, we have one more question for Virginie. We'll try to catch it at the end, or I can ask Virginie to look at the question and respond to the question directly to the person. Gauthier and Ralph, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Arnaud, for handing over, for the kind introduction. And I think it looks as if it's a really nice match, linking this directly after the HPC presentation. Gauthier, I think you're still on mute. We are sharing that one. We are both apart from the regular jobs that we're doing. So we're also part of the Gaia X team here in Luxembourg, and we have the pleasure to talk about a little bit about Gaia X. Gauthier, you want to take the first thing? You're on mute. I can see the red microphone there, so you're still on mute for sure. Now he's gone. Oh.
Do you hear me?
Yes, now it's working. Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you, Arnaud. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to have you all this morning to exchange for the next 30 minutes about Gaia X and what's in it for you. So let's quickly move to do this agenda. So in the first part, we will try to investigate why and what is Gaia X, before explaining how Gaia X will bring order in an ecosystem which might sometimes look a bit chaotic. Then in the third part, we will see who are the parties involved in this initiative, before finishing by something which is probably what interests you most today, the what's in it for you question. So let's go. So let's start with our first chapter, what and why is Gaia X? Firstly, what is Gaia X? If you ask different people what is their understanding of what is Gaia X, I'm sure that we'll get various answers. Some will say that it's a set of standards, it's an open source initiative. Others will say that it will be a company, it's a data space for research, and you might even read or hear that it's about infrastructure or it's a product. And in fact, they are all kind of correct, but we will try to clarify this in the next 29 or 28 minutes. And now, why is Gaia X? So let's quickly analyze the commercial market of the cloud business. And looking at this map and the numbers, you can quite easily conclude that Europe is behind, or even to be frank, far behind the US, and represented only 4% of the market. And still, these are the numbers where Wirecard was still a nice story, but this story is part of the past now. So first conclusion, EU is late and has plenty of room for progression. But there is more than just a commercial reason that led to Gaia X. There is also the regulatory context. In July 2016, the Privacy Shield had been put in place, and Europe considered that the American regulations offer the same protection level than the European regulation regarding the protection of personal data. So provided that you follow the EU legal framework, you were allowed to transfer personal data to the US. And then it had been adopted in April 2016, but we are now in May 2018, and the General Data Protection Regulation is now officially applicable. It has, as you know, a huge impact on the collection of data, its storage and its processing. But it's also very important to keep in mind that wherever in the world the data are stored, as long as it is data about European citizens, then GDPR is applicable. But 2 months before the application of the GDPR, so in March 2018, the American administration decides that they have the right to ask for criminal investigation every data belonging to American companies, even if those data are stored outside of their territory. Moreover, they don't have to ask to the local competent authorities to do this. This is what is called the Cloud Act. And as you can imagine, this made a lot of noise in Europe. And then there was Mr. Schrems, who filed a lawsuit against Facebook. It lasted for years, but one of the outcomes of this is that in July 2020, the European Court of Justice judged that the Privacy Shield has to be invalidated. Since then, it is forbidden to send personal data of European citizens outside of Europe if you don't respect very strict conditions that are defined in the GDPR. So the GaiaX project was initiated to enable a secure, open, and sovereign use of data, and it's not restricted to compliance. We need to keep the control on our data and our infrastructures to keep our sovereignty and autonomy. Everything that is required for an economy to work can be weaponized. Yesterday, the target was Huawei, but who knows who will be the next geopolitical context, and maybe a whole continent might be the next target. So it's very important to know where and how your data are stored, processed, and used, and to comply with the GDPR rules and to follow the European values. But how will GaiaX help us on this? I'll let Ralph tell you more about this.
Yeah, so next chapter is named Managing Chaos. It has nothing to do with my work desk, but we figured it's a good idea to explain the concept of GaiaX, because we have seen in the past that it's not really easy to explain it, because you've seen the elephant. So it's not one product, it's not one company, it's not about one building the next European hyperscaler. It's a little bit more than that. Next slide. So imagine aviation had no rules and no standard. One pilot would talk in one language, the other one in another language. They don't communicate with each other. There is no tower in the that kind of synchronizes who is currently landing whatsoever, or maybe, you know, there is not even a standard on what type of kerosene to use. I'm sure the number of crashes would go up, and I guess a lot of people were more reluctant to fly. This is a lot about trust on the user side, but it's a lot about common standards on the other side, which are important. I'm sure that Arnaud could talk a lot more due to his track record, but let's not get into that one at this stage. So next slide. Two things which are really important. We have a bit of governance which is given by the aviation authorities, and they're contributing with two main factors. So one is setting up global standards to fly by. That goes up from, or starts at the bottom with technical requirements, legal requirements, it goes to safety requirements, checklists. It goes far beyond that, you know, by like what kind of training does a pilot have to have in order to fly a plane? What does IATA do to make sure that your suitcase actually makes it to Dubai if you're changing the airline in between, etc., etc. And on the other side, we also have something which ensures the fulfillment, and that's the air traffic control. And well, luckily in Luxembourg, we even have the training for that one given over here. So these two things are actually main contributing factors to air safety, and luckily we have them in place. Next slide. So it makes flying safer, it creates compatibility, which goes far beyond the technical aspects. It makes sure your luggage arrives it's mainly due to all these different things: standardized language, frameworks, and it also gives, let's say, parties that are just building parts of airplanes or are building software for the aviation business a controlled framework to operate in. So how does that actually link to the clouds? Question: would you choose to fly one airline and one type of airplane only? I guess not. But that's currently what we kind of have when you look at the cloud industry. If you choose one cloud, there is sort of a vendor lock-in from a user perspective. And the goal is to create common requirements. So for the provider, it creates a framework, and the, let's say, compliance to build an ecosystem. And for the users, that ecosystem gives them a choice. Yeah. So it's not that you have to choose one airline at a time or one specific plane at a time, and then you're stuck with that one and you cannot choose, because that's a little bit the situation that we have. And unfortunately, to extrapolate the analogy, these airlines are not really flying by European standards, and as we've seen in the previous slides, they're not really European companies. Okay, next slide. So that means what Gaia-X is trying to achieve is we're going from a traditional cloud to an ecosystem. We are going from a proprietary one cloud system with a vendor lock-in to something that creates a framework of trust and security, where you can actually choose your player and you can switch in between. That's from a user perspective, that's very important, but also because, well, I'm working for a provider, for us is also very important, because without that framework in place, it's very hard to develop things. So the next slide shows, it's a little bit technical, and I hope it's not too dry. That's something, if you're digging a little bit deeper into the topic, you'll see that one popping up on a regular basis. It's the famous X of Gaia-X. It shows the eco services of the services and data. So, and it's basically the same thing that I just described for the aviation business. You start with technical stuff on the bottom, which is infrastructure. In the middle, you have something that acts as a glue, the framework, everything. And on top of that, it's building an ecosystem. That ecosystem we currently don't have to the extent needed due to the single vendor lock-in that we have, and due to, let's say, the missing interoperability and compatibility of that word. Okay, hand over to Gauthier. I think you'll talk a little bit about the actors.
Yeah, exactly. So Gaia-X is not the creation of a supreme being. You have people behind this. And if we look at Gaia-X from a bird's eye view, we can identify three main parties. At the international level, we have the AISBL, which is the core of the organizational structure, I will tell it, of Gaia-X. And they act as unifying body. But we'll see this in more detail in the next slide. And then at national level, you can find the Gaia-X hubs. Around 20 countries have founded their hub. And our hub in Luxembourg exists since March of this year. And what do we do? But we are the point of contact between the ASBL and our local actors. We help our companies to join or get involved in Gaia-X, and we help them to find synergies with other companies in Luxembourg, but also outside of Luxembourg. And the third actor is the Gaia-X community. I mean, all the companies and PO associations which are involved in this initiative and who will meet in order to work on common challenges and propose solutions that best fit their domain. So the Gaia-X initiative is not an idea from a group of hippies, but there is a serious organization behind it, and it's taken seriously by the different actors involved. We can even say that we think that it's taken seriously by the ones who try to feed the press with negative ideas, as they probably consider this initiative as a threat. You can see that there is a formal structure composed of a general assembly, and it's more or less 300 members who elect the board of directors, which appoints a CEO, CFO, so the usual roles you find in every big company. And I just mentioned the board of directors, but look at the logo of some of the companies represented here. You can see that they are not the smallest one. It shows that this initiative is taken seriously and that they don't want to miss the train. You can also see here 3 committees that can be joined by the members of the ASBL to work on policy and rules, on topics related to the data spaces, and on technical subjects. And we can also see here 2 advisory boards, the general one and the governmental one, which, as their name suggests, advise the board of directors. Luxembourg has been granted a seat in the governmental advisory board like 7 other countries, plus the EU Commission, France, and Germany. But I mentioned the large companies, but we can also see here that Gaia-X initiative concerns everybody. As you can see here, it's quite well distributed between the different size of companies and even the non-profit organization and associations, which are quite well represented here. So what is Gaia-X? Or maybe no, let's start by what it is not. Gaia-X is not a standardization body. They want to let that duty to the professional ones. And what they will do is that they will recommend standards and they will define the criteria for a Gaia-X compliant label. Gaia-X is not a software or hardware product, nor a cloud platform. Gaia-X will never be an Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, but they will define requirements and standards in order to build an architecture and rules that will make these concepts of interoperability, portability, interconnectivity possible. As already mentioned, the AISBL is driving the initiative, and the AISBL decided to use a bottom-up approach to define what will be those standards. So what they have done is that they asked their members to bring use cases in order to identify the challenges and propose solutions. So as I mentioned earlier, we have around 20 hubs in Europe and also now outside of Europe who help their national actors to meet with others and organize themselves in working groups, which leads to this matrix structure. And what they do, they will select use cases and try to propose standards that will bring solutions to problems or challenges that are specific to their domain. They will select a leader who will run this group. And we in Luxembourg can be quite proud of this because the Luxembourg Institute of Health has the lead on the health domain, and REA Luxembourg is the co-leader of the space domain, which was also co-founded by EBRC in Luxembourg. So Gaia-X will define the frameworks, the basis like the technical architecture document, which describes the concepts required to establish the Gaia-X data and infrastructure ecosystem. They are also currently working on a document which is the architecture of standards. In this document, they will define which are the standards that have to be followed. And the good thing is that they are trying to use existing and proven standards. Policy and rules. What are the internal rules of Gaia-X and what are the rules or regulations that have to be considered in order to run a Gaia-X compliant platform? They will also develop the components that we have seen before in the center of the X schema. And finally, they define what are the criteria that have to be met in order to be Gaia-X compliant. So on this slide, we present you 3 of the use cases specific to the Industry 4.0 domain. Those use cases have been proposed by the actors of this domain who want to reach common goals. And this is here that the real work happened and that they will produce specifications that will then be shared with the AISBL. So the first use case is the manufacturer of a component embedded in a machine operated by another company would like to receive data about its component and the machine itself. So the first question is who owns the data? And the second one is who wants to share which data with whom? What Gaia-X will do is they will create an interconnected, provider-neutral data infrastructure that enables a secure data storage and a sovereign data exchange. The second use case that we are presenting here is about the supply chains, where more and more suppliers are involved and technologies are evolving rapidly. This also means different systems to link together in order to communicate or share the data. And a point on which Gaia-X will help is by developing standards and unified semantics that will be used to link the data to each other. But we could mention many more advantages. And finally, I don't think that I have to explain what is predictive maintenance, but the idea here is that by being proactive, we can prevent critical situations before they occur. And in order to predict problems on their production lines, companies will use AI and machine learning to analyze data and identify possible failures that might occur in the near future. And what do we need for this? Enough data that we, of course, often don't have. So GaiaX will create an infrastructure where data from different companies could be gathered and on which machine learning algorithms could be trained. There are plenty of possibilities, and I didn't mention here the new business models that may result from an exchange of data. But if you are interested in those use cases, I invite you to go on the GaiaX.eu website, where you can find a page dedicated to the use cases. So, and here is a slide presenting what will be the objectives for the next 4 to 5 coming years. Everything has been quite quick since the beginning of the initiative, which is not always the case for a European initiative. And I won't spend too much time on this slide, but like for Rome, that wasn't built in a day, GaiaX will need some time to reach all the objectives they define. So I think we have here a 5 years ambitious plan. So I now let the floor to Ralph for the last but interesting part of this presentation.
Yeah, so come into the interesting question. What's in it for you? And well, if you're from the manufacturing cluster and not from the ICT cluster, that is quite a fair question, and I hope I can answer that in the next 2-3 slides. So, well, obviously, if you're an infrastructure or a service provider, this is more or less getting involved in order to position your products, your services, and in order to earn money. And of course, you can kind of shape the rules rather than just, let's say, being a follower by being compliant to that one. On the other side, if you're coming from the manufacturing area, actually, that's quite close to it, because we see more and more companies that are actually moving into the service provider area. So if you take a look at Festo, most of you probably know these guys, you know, all these little cylinders that move things on a manufacturing line. But if you take a look at what they're providing on top of their existing services, that's quite interesting in terms of preventive maintenance, in terms of how they connect to other parties. And of course, that requires let's say, a lot of collaboration, a lot of orchestration, and for such a thing, GaiaX is definitely a nice thing. The other thing is, if you are the data owner and you have an idea, I think it's a match made in heaven in combination with the HPC, because you can try out things over there, you can develop your algorithms, you can see if it really works on that platform with the support of LIST or other research organizations, and if that really flies, you can build that into production on a platform like GaiaX, which then relates to new business opportunities and maybe also new ideas, or another thing is, for example, in Germany, there's a big initiative on the supply chain management, especially for the automotive sector. So that has a specific name, which I don't recall, but I can look that one up if you're interested, where they are just want to make sure that the complete supply chain is working. And of course, as you can imagine, that relates to a lot of, let's say, compatibility questions. But looking at the chip crisis that we currently have, it's interesting to see, will that fly, will that not fly? And you want to be in the game as early as possible. So where can you actually play in this game? Well, as Gauthier put it in the previous slides, you can either be part of, let's say, a project. And if you have an idea, if you have a service, if you're looking for something, feel free to reach out to us. If you say, no, actually, I would like to be more in the driver's seat, or a little bit up in the food chain, let's say, getting a little bit more politically, you can become a member of the ISBL, and depending on the size of the company, there's also a price adjustment, so it's not a high financial hurdle if you're a small company, if you want to get in there, because then you basically get also access to all the data which is produced, or the standards or the ideas which are produced, and you can participate in the committees to shaping what should be the rules we want to play on in the next couple of years in the EU and in the cloud business. So Gauthier has already gone to the next slide. What about Luxembourg? What are we actually doing over here? Well, for, I think, compared to the surrounding countries, we're fairly small but fairly busy and also quite successful. So we have a small but powerful coordination team, which Gauthier and I are happy to be part of. Well, it's public and private. The lead is currently with Luxinnovation. We have the IESBL, where we're, as Luxembourg, are member of the Governmental Advisory Board. There are 3 direct members in there, 12 indirect members. If you wonder why direct and indirect, that has to do with the structure. So everybody is welcome in the IESBL, in the club, but there are some even parties, and I've been asked that question before, like, why are the hell is Palantir a member of the IESBL? We said, we don't want to exclude anybody from the club. It's just that we set up certain rules if you want to play the game. So it's open to anybody, including American companies. So you see Microsoft has been in there and the other super players. But there are certain rules in place which, for example, prohibit that one company can be joined with multiple national members. So, for example, in our own case, Proximus Luxembourg being a direct daughter company of Proximus Belgium. Belgium is already a member, so we can't join directly ourselves, which I think makes pretty much sense. So you can become a member of the ISBL, getting a little bit more into the steering of the whole thing, or you can just work in the domains. And there we're also quite successful in Luxembourg. We have the LAH, which is head of the health working group, and they're driving a pretty interesting project in the health sector. We have REA and EBRC, which just started with a space working group. So there's rumble in the Bronx. And I think, like I said, we're doing quite well for such a small company. I think we have a couple minutes left. Gauthier, do you want to show a quick video, which is slightly more professional?
Yeah.
And then we probably have 2-3 minutes left for questions. Well, that's a video of myself. Oh, okay.
Data. Store, send, and generate it everywhere and all the time. Their interconnection can foster countless new ideas in business, science, and society. The Gaia X project was initiated with the objective of enabling a secure, open, and sovereign use of data. In this way, self-determined decisions can be made on how and where data is stored, processed, and used within the data infrastructure. This new quality of data interconnection is achieved through the following conditions. Portability ensures that data and services from different sources can be easily exchanged within the data infrastructure. Thanks to technical interoperability, services and data can be transmitted seamlessly. High-performance network connections between providers will enable interconnectivity. Data from different sources can be merged within the federated infrastructure. The guiding principles of Gaia X are based on European values. The implementation of these guiding principles is ensured by a set of policy rules and is built on existing standards. Compliance with these policy rules is ensured by the federated services. Gaia X creates transparency over the entire data and services portfolio and secures unique identification of the participants. The services enable a trustworthy and sovereign exchange of data. Gaia X creates new data spaces through the interconnection of data. This lays the foundation for a unique data and service ecosystem. Completely new possibilities for the use and application of data are emerging, from medical technology and industrial manufacturing to specific AI applications. We describe these new solutions advanced smart services. With Gaia X, we provide business, science, and society with a future-oriented answer while strengthening Europe's competitiveness and growth. Gaia X is an invitation to Europe and the world to create a digital future that is both open and fair.
Perfect. I'll hand over to Arnaud if there are any questions.
Thank you, Gauthier, and thank you, Ralph, for sharing that. And Gauthier, if you could also then stop sharing your presentation so that we can get back into the video. Well, thank you. Very interesting. I mean, here, I mean, for the audience, I think the key element to retain here, I'm sure, is really about the fact that it's about shaping the future. I mean, Luxembourg is definitely, as we have seen up to the presentation this morning, we have already a lot of things in our digital landscape, but here it's really about shaping the future of digital landscape. And one key element, we know the importance of the cloud, but we know also the importance of the challenges linked to cybersecurity, theft of solutions, IP, etc. So having something that is trusted, secured, obeying to standards when you are not locked, meaning freedom of choice, are key elements that are to be really helping the different industry members to get more and advance further in digital transformation, being in this case trusted and secured. So I think that's a big step there forward. I mean, we don't have this question from the panel, so we can also keep them for the end. And without further ado, probably we're going to the next subject of shaping the future with Jérôme. And we will have some time for questions at the end. But Jérôme is Senior Advisor, European R&D and Innovation Support at Luxinnovation, and it's also a colleague of mine. Thank you, Jérôme. Very active in different domains related to everything is about European matters, but also, I mean, you had Joe speaking about the Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub. But here, let's have Jérôme enlarging completely the scope here and speak about the European Digital Innovation Hub network and what that will bring into the toolbox of Luxembourg digital landscape for the industry. Jérôme, over to you.
Thank you very much, Arnaud. Can you please confirm you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I would like now to please share my presentation, so I hope you can all see it.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Arnaud, for the introduction, and I would like to quickly make take the opportunity to thank all the people that has been working in organizing this conference online, specifically the little hands behind the stage. So big thanks to all of them. As Arnaud has introduced me, good morning. My name is Jérôme. I'm Senior Advisor for Digital and Security Innovation Funding in Luxinnovation, and I'm mainly working for European fundings. And as such, I'm very pleased to justly finish the loop in this morning sessions about the Smart Manufacturing Week. We have started this morning session with Joe making the introduction about the digital innovation hubs from Luxembourg. I'm going to be happy to go back to these digital innovation hubs, but giving the perspective on the European digital hub, and it will continue to shed some lights justly on what's happening at EU level after the presentation of Gauthier and Ralph on GaiaX. I was also very pleased to see some reactions in the chat and on the question from the presentation from Virginie and Matthieu, because actually some of the things that were presenting to you were just the European funding's innovation project, like for example, the Terrific project. And I'm very pleased to see that there was some positive reactions. So why we are here mentioning about the European Digital Innovation Hubs? Well, I would like, if you allow me, to make maybe a quick reminder from what Joe has been presenting. So the first thing is that Digital Innovation Hub in Luxembourg, we have decided that it will be mainly focusing on manufacturing for the future. But looking at the technology landscape, well, there is three main big technologies that we need to push forwards and deployed at a broader scale. And those technologies are, in a broader scale, HPC. So here we link with Meluxina. Cybersecurity, that's going to be addressed in the different sessions and during this Smart Manufacturing Week, and also artificial intelligence, liaising with what Virginie has presented us. But in the definition of a digital innovation hub, we should not forget what are the four pillars, and I'm happy to remind them on what you can see on the top right of your screens. The four pillars of a digital innovation hubs are the test before invest, and here Matthieu has presented us to see for HPC what will be the process for testing HPC for different applications. But there is three others, and three others are just the skills and trainings, building the ecosystem at local level, so the innovation ecosystem and networking, and there is the support to find investment. And Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub, under the leadership of Arnaud, will be just trying to bring all those four pillars and the existing infrastructure and the existing services already existing towards the digital transformation of the manufacturing. Allow me to make a step back. A few years ago, not so long time ago, digitizing European industry. Well, I think we will all agree that this is a necessary step for the growth of our economy and the growth of our society. Luxembourg has been at the helm of this digital transformation, but it's fair to say that we were not the only one. Almost all the European member states, including UK at that time, had a specific policies for digital transformation. For Luxembourg, if you remember a few years ago, it was the D4I working group that FEDIL has been managing, and I'm very pleased to say that just the LDH in Luxembourg is taking over these initiatives. But if you look at it from a European perspective, what the European Commission is concerned about is, since 2016, how do you make sure that anyone in Europe can get access to those advanced digital technologies? Building an HPC machinery is expensive, and you need to pool resources that maybe are not available in just a single country or even in just a single region. Apologies. But the advantage is to use these technologies and to use HPC, AI, or any other should be shared and should be available to be able to have a connected continent. So that's where the notion of the Digital Innovation Hub emerged. Allow me to go a little bit back in time. The Digital Innovation Hub has been growing. It's not a new concept in per se. Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hubs has been really at the forefront of the innovation. But the very first digital innovation hubs, in terms of giving access to advanced digital technologies, were already starting in the 2010s, 2012 years. And just to give some few buzzwords, maybe some of you will remember the Fortissimo project or the Interfix project. Then there has been growing. There were really industry that were pushing for the deployment and the take-up of this technology. Different project has been funding at EU level. I can mention, for example, the Logistic for Manufacturing SMEs project that were already a marketplace for digital technologies in logistics. In the recent years, really in the last 2 years, a new project has been also launched at EU level. I give you here 3 of them. I can only invite you to go have a look at to them, because if you are looking for having access to services for digital twins or services for the digital transformation of your SMEs, well, those can be a support. And here, Luxinnovation and the LDH will be the bridge toward those projects. But all of this were already pushing by the industry, pulling by the industry. Now with the LDH and with the European Digital Innovation Hub, there is a push coming from the public authorities. And I'll explain to that for a minute, but what is really new is that not only now we have infrastructure or structuring initiative at EU level, like Euro HPC, from which Meluxina is part of, but in every technology, we also have the pooling of common resources in advanced digital technologies. And the Digital Innovation Hub and the future European Digital Innovation will increase just even more this pooling of common resources. And it will do so by linking with a local ecosystem, by structuring them. I'll be happy to go more in details if you're interested in that with the questions or with a comment. But what I would like to really make understand is that Digital Innovation Hubs is not a new story. What you have on your left side of your screen is the mapping of the digital by local.
It does look, dear audience, that we just lost our friend Jero. I'm sure we'll give him a few seconds to log back in. Probably a battery problem that would be running, which is in the end between on the digital front end between power and connectivity. Those are the two actually key components, and of course a human behind. So let's make sure that the resiliency of Jero will take full swing. And in the meanwhile, let me already address a few points since we're approaching the end of it. We're going to see further how this ecosystem of European Digital Innovation Hub will contribute to you. And as Jero said, it's a need from the industry, but it's also going basically and not being pushed by the authorities to get to you and to your benefits. Again, different elements here, part of this ecosystem in which and all blends together. But as you see, that's where at Luxinnovation, we are actually helping all companies in that transformation. And here I can see that Jero is back online. Resilience did work. And you see, he's so eager to make sure he gets into the end of his message that he's back online. So Jero, whenever you're ready, just here we go. Jero,
do you hear me? Do you hear me?
We hear you back. We see
Okay.
you back again, and it was just when you started basically that slide that suddenly something happened. So over to
Okay.
you.
That was very well, because from my side I was still hearing you very well. So, but nevertheless, it's passed. So let's move forward. I think about my key message here that I wanted to say, that the Digital Innovation Hub is not a new story at European level, but the European Digital Innovation Hubs is a new narrative. On the left side of the slide, you can see the mapping inside the catalog of all the digital innovation hubs that has been labeled as such by the European Commissions. On the right side, you will see what would become the EDH in the new things. And why am I bothering you with these little details, which is a little E in front of the digital innovation? Well, because what the Commission is actually funding and what we want to build is not digital innovation hubs, but what we want to build is a structured network of European digital innovation hubs. And this is where there is a convergence and the pool of common resources coming from the European Commission and coming from the different member states. Why is that? Well, we have seen this morning that Luxembourg has a leadership role in HPC, has a leadership role in artificial intelligence. But I hope it will not shock anyone, and I think it would be fair to say that a single region, even Luxembourg, cannot be leadership in all the digital technologies that that are currently available on the market. And but I have to immediately say that we are quite a lot. But if an SME in Europe would like to get access to the advanced digital technology for which we have the expertise, how do we do that? If a Luxembourg organization would like to get access to an advanced digital technology that is not available in Luxembourg, how do we do that? Here comes the structured network. There will be specialized hubs for the digital infrastructure and the digital technologies. It's going to be aligning with all the distribution of the smart specialization strategy. There will be each of those hubs will structure the local ecosystem to make sure there is not a duplication of efforts and funding. And finally, there will be also an alignment between the investment that has been made at regional or national level with also the EU initiatives. I mentioned AI for EU, I mentioned EuroPC, but Gaia-X is part of also. It's really streamlining and putting all together at EU level common resources. And for that, we will need EDH cooperation. So in terms of cross-border cooperation, Luxembourg Digital Innovation, we see this cross-border collaboration as really an asset for our ecosystem, for our economy, and for our talent. Thanks to that, our expertise can be reached beyond our borders, but we can also reach expertise that are beyond our border as such. We can offer mutual services at EU level. Gaia-X is a perfect example of that. We can also co-create common services that would be have a better critical mass. That would be very useful, for example, for AI. Ralph and Gauthier mentioned standards and certifications. This is what we want to go also for common standards to reinforce the EU economy. And of course, best practices exchange at EU level. We are doing great. People would like to hear what we are doing in Luxembourg. The European Digital Innovation Hub and the cooperation will be a way of doing that. And I'm very pleased to say that under Arnaud's and Luxinnovation leadership, we have already started. We're not yet a European Digital Innovation Hub. We haven't got the label yet. We're working on it, and we can go in details in this if you want. But we have decided to focus on the greater regions, and we have decided that it would be for the best of our interest to cooperate with our neighbors. Proximity matters, and it's very interesting to see that actually our neighbors in Belgium, Germany, and France also we're going to have European digital innovation focusing on manufacturing. Here we have a complementarity in technologies. We have a complementarity on expertise, and offering common services at the greater region will be a strong asset for the greater region economy and for the greater region expertise. Of course, this doesn't mean we want to look with exclusivity to the greater region. We want to go at EU level, and we will establish, we are in the process of doing this, we will establish what we call corridors and cooperation with other EDH. I'm very pleased to say that a joint declaration between the 5 European Digital Innovation Hubs candidates at the greater region is about to be signed. It's probably going to be done in the coming weeks, probably at the beginning of next month. But we are already closely working toward offering common services at the greater region. All of this for the benefit of our expertise and the benefit of our SMEs. So why do we do that? Well, we understand that pooling common resources in advanced digital technologies is a bust because it's expensive. Let's be honest. Building an HPC machine, having a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, having cybersecurity protections can be expensive. So that's why we want to leverage the national fundings with the European fundings. And here I would like to mention very briefly the Digital European Program. We understand that the LDH will structure the ecosystem at Luxembourg level and greater region level. But there is also a lot of initiatives that are currently running, and there will be new initiatives and new infrastructure that's going to be run at EU level. And this is something I want to quickly mention, and that's going to be my last slide. The testing and experiment facilities for AI and the European Industrial Data Exchange Platform. So allow me to finish with the 2 last slides. Today, the Commission is officially launching the Digital European Program. It's a new instrument in this big symphony being played for the digital ecosystem. It's going to be investment for the deployment and the rollout of advanced digital technologies. And we can see here there is a lot of alignment with what has been presenting this morning. There will be investment in HPC infrastructures, in HPC services. There will be investment in cloud, data, and artificial, in cybersecurity. The Digital European Program will be also the vehicle for the investment for the EDH. And you can see in these slides just the other initiatives that's going to be merged. I would like to mention the digital twins, for example. I would like to mention blockchains, but I also would like to mention, if you allow me to go a little bit beyond smart manufacturing, public administrations. Allow me with my last slide to go more in those 2 new instruments in this orchestra. I mentioned the testing and experimental facilities. There will be what the Commission called world-class reference site for experimentation and testing AI solution. So imagine you are an SME and a startup, and you want to make sure that the artificial intelligence technology that you want to use works in almost living conditions. Well, those infrastructures will be set at EU level, pooling the resources of all the hopefully all the artificial intelligence expertise. Here, there are going to be 5 of them that are going to be funded via the Digital European Program. 1 of them will be in manufacturing. Allow me then to finish the loop of this morning with the European data space, and here it bridges with Gaia-X. There will be the EUWAD Industrial Data Exchange Platform built on common standard and interoperability. And there are going to be 13 of them to be found. 1 of them will be just in manufacturing. So the digital ecosystem at EU level is structuring. There is a new initiative that is emerging. The LDH has a role to play in linking all those initiatives to give better services for supporting the digital transformation of the manufacturing ecosystem. And we will hope that we will be a good bridge between all the DH in Europe and between all those initiatives by becoming a European digital innovation hub and taking a leadership role, a beacon in this European digital innovation hubs network. Now I'm finishing my presentations. Thank you very much for your attention. And Arnaud, with my apologies for the connection interruptions, back to you.
Thank you, Gero. Thank you for going into such a short time into a very wide area and a very, I would say, complex matter. I mean, we have a key question on the audience, which I think is very, very pointed. Gero, in your eyes, which country in EU is an absolute leader in digitalization?
Oh, that's a fair question, but that's a dangerous one for me to reply. Well, I will not speak in terms of country. I will speak in terms of regions. We know that there are some regions that are very well advanced, for example, in Germany, thanks notably for all the work that has been done in with the Fraunhofer Institute. So Germany, with the region of Munich, with the region of Saarland, are quite advanced in terms of digital technologies for industry. I will mention Spain, the Bilbao region. I will mention Italy, the Milano regions. I would, of course, mention Luxembourg. Luxembourg, we are taking a leadership and a beacon roles when it comes for HPC for industry. We are not the only one, but we are in a leading role. We are really in a leading role. I'm going to stop there to not make frustrations or to not make politically unadvised comments.
Thank you, Gero. I would also advise the audience to look into the latest European DAISY report, we call it, and ranking different countries, in which Luxembourg ranked number 8, and you see certain Nordic countries a bit ahead of us, and we are climbing the ladder with all the initiatives we have here. We're arriving at the end of this morning session. Let me first, while I will do the close, let me first encourage you to go into the poll section. I've just asked you there, and certainly have started. Thank you. Just if you could rate just this morning session, that will always be a very good feedback for us, not only from the content, but also to see how we can further improve. So it's a tab on the right that you should have in your screen. Let me, if you allow me, have a few closing words before I'm sure you all want to go back into your own business and potentially have lunch. But I think the key purpose of this morning was really to see in smart manufacturing what is the digital landscape of Luxembourg. And from that, I want to thank all the speakers and their contribution and just the key highlights. I mean, Joe started by, after, of course, the introduction of Ministry of Economy, Mr. FAYOT, Joe, who highlighted the key, I would say, investment that the country is doing in the key priorities. Yeah, Joe started from a digital innovation hub and came back with, I would say, the field trip, I would say, information, where actually it's not only what is the digital innovation hub to support digitalization, but also, in the end, it's a blend between technology, information, focus on the customer, and with the human at the center, for any digital transformation, be it in the industry or anywhere else, but definitely in the industry, as yes, there is robotics, but the human still plays a key role. I mean, with Virginie and coming with a holistic experience, that's when we start the journey from realizing, yes, we are in 4.0, but guys and ladies, 5.0 is there too. 4.0 is about digitalization, 5.0 is about personalization. And I think this gave a pretty good insight of what is already today and what we still have to do and what will be the future. Again, personalization being the human at the center. And also coming with very concrete 6 cases being on the AI, augmented reality, IoT, and more in the industry, and seeing how that basically could inspire the different companies. And you don't need to be large or small to be innovative and to explore the new technologies. Matthieu came and highlighted us in I would say, the world of HPC and HPDA, so high performance computing and high performance data analytics, with a commonality about, say, data, speed, simulation, exploration, where you suddenly push further the frontier, the barriers of discovery. And in the end, also pretty clear to say, well, it's not only for large companies, but also for SMEs. So here, clearly, size doesn't matter. It's more probably the size of your data might matter, but not the size of your company. But definitely a lot of insights on how we can leverage the possibilities of HPC and HPDA, and we have the luxury to have it in Luxembourg, the ecosystem, open to the industry directly. Gauthier and Ralph then started also into the world of the future, shaping the future digital ecosystem of Luxembourg, but actually the European side in which Luxembourg is having a key role, about the whole GAIA-X initiative about building a future European sovereign cloud, and it's about, of course, leveraging all the different providers that are already doing that, existing today, but making sure the interoperability, the standards, that's what GAIA-X is providing, the standards, the trust, the security, allowing in the end anybody to have the freedom and the trust to use the cloud to store its very precious data. That is even more important in regards to what we have today and what we have witnessed in cybersecurity, an increase, I would say, threats into the industry related to cybersecurity. Last but not least, Gero closed back the loop in between the different initiatives, but starting from the LDH into the EDH and highlighting the benefits of the future EDH. So just to complement what he said, the current Luxembourg Innovation Hub is applying to a call of becoming in the European Digital Innovation Hub. The call has opened yesterday, so we're actively working on that. And that will allow to leverage the synergies that we have seen into not only what we're already doing today, the greater region, but also further reach out into Europe. And we close by the European Digital Innovation Program. The Digital European Program and its key insight, but that would be for future sessions. Thank you, first of all, for being with us so long, for this whole morning on the digital landscape. We have seen the impact on digital on competitiveness, but also the key role it has on sustainability. And again, it's about the combination between the human expertise, the data, and the technology that will make the success. So thank you very much. Hopefully you had a chance to fill in the poll so that we know how we can further improve the session in the future. Don't forget to rejoin at 4 o'clock for the next session that will be as interesting, if not even more than this one. And in the meanwhile, use the platform to network, to visit the booths. There is a lot to do and a lot to learn in this space. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you on the networking part. Thank you. Bye-bye.